This is Heath Sanders, and you're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE.
Welcome in. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Kortman. I'm Tom Kelly. We're going to be here with you for the next hour talking about all sorts of different things that relate to mental health. Oh no, are you allowed to say that? Yeah, we're going to say it. Not everybody who is out there driving is comfortable talking about some of these things, but you know what? Nobody knows you're listening. So we won't tell anybody, and you have the opportunity to hear from one of the, I'm going to say it, one of the world's best psychologists, 75,000 hours of doing therapy with people. That's giving, not receiving. He's just a fantastic person, seen it all. You're not going to surprise him with any questions. If you got a question, you want to reach out to us. We're the only ones who can see your email, Dr. Chris, that's Dr. Chris, at TNCRadio.LIVE. We will not reveal your name or any other information, so you got a question you want to ask, feel free, and we will grab it while we're here on the air. Dr. Christopher Kortman, how are you tonight, sir?
I am well, and after hearing your story about battling back from COVID, I'm very grateful because, as I was mentioning to you off the air, I now have COVID for the second time. I'm doing it every January now with my new slogan, New Year, New Variant. And we'll see what we have next January. But, excuse me, I feel fine. I'm in day 5 of it, and it's been nothing more than a cold. We used to have these things called colds when I was growing up.
Right.
And that's pretty much what this is like, clogged nose and then a runny nose, little temperature, the night sweats, body aches, that kind of thing. I'm fine. So glad to be here and grateful to be included on your show. Thank you, Tom.
Well, this is your show, and we're awfully happy that you've joined with us to bring this valuable information out to our drivers. Last week, we spoke about loneliness, and we talked about some of the things that you can do to deal with loneliness. But, along with loneliness, we hear an awful lot, and I was sharing some stats with you earlier today. Multiple studies put in we won't get too much into the numbers. They don't matter, 15, 16, 17, whatever percentage it is. Almost every study has truck drivers as an occupation as having people with a lot of depression. Now, so I want to start off, let's kind of get our terms defined as we get the evening started. When we're talking about depression, what's the difference between clinical depression and, gosh, I'm just really sad?
Yeah, Tom, that's an excellent question because we all know what sadness feels like. And sadness is a normal human emotion. I'm going to back up a little bit because I want to give a mini lesson on human emotion that I think is perfect for anybody who likes to be behind the wheel of anything. And that is, I believe you can take human emotions and make the analogy of the dummy lights on the dashboard of your vehicle. When one of these things lights up, it's a message to you about how the operation is working. So, for instance, back in the day, if the dummy light for the seatbelt or the door in the rear view on the passenger side, or the driver's side rather, would light up, I would say, oh, that's a problem. That light's on, and I'd pull the car over and open up the door and shut it because I had a child, and if that child fell out, I know his mother would be really mad at me. So I was happy to have that light go on because it was a message. And the message was door's not closed properly or the seatbelt's not on properly. Great thing to have dummy lights. Same thing's true when you're low on oil or gas or whatever the deal is, there's a light to send that message to you. Well, in my estimation, all of our emotions send us messages about how we're perceiving the world. And sadness, when the sadness light comes on, there's a message there that I'm experiencing a loss. Sadness is about the perception of loss. Now, how severe the sadness actually correlates perfectly with how invested I am or how big the loss was. Tampa Bay Buck fans have some sadness today about the loss yesterday. We will not have back-to-back Super Bowl victories. We're out of the playoffs. But that sadness is nothing compared to somebody who loses a family member, right? The death of a child, a pet, a longtime pet, a spouse. I mean, the sadness that would occur when something that significant occurs, that sadness is pronounced. That is very, very heightened, if you will. So sadness is just about loss, and there are degrees of sadness. You could take any emotion and maybe put it on a 1 to 10 scale or a 1 to 100 scale. But depression is a syndrome. It's an illness that, first of all, in order to qualify, you need 2 weeks, a minimum of 2 weeks to qualify for clinical depression. You cannot have a bad day or a rough weekend. You know, if all 4 of your NFL teams lost this weekend, you could say, I had a rough weekend, now I'm depressed. You're not clinically depressed. You can't be unless you've had 2 weeks of the following symptoms. Are you ready for these symptoms? You can write them down.
Ready.
The first 2 symptoms I give you are the 2 biggies. These are the ones that are most closely linked with clinical depression. And the first one everybody knows about, the clinical name is dysphoria, but what it really is low mood, down in the dumps, sad, blue, just not feeling well. I mean, that's the real definition of depression. When people say, I'm depressed today, you know that's what they're talking about. They have a low mood, they're down in the dumps, they're just sad, blue, melancholic, whatever. But the second symptom that's most correlated with a clinical depression is called anhedonia. And the root word there, hedon, you may have heard of hedonism, which is the philosophy of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Well, you put the prefix a before a word, and it's not. And when there's an H, you have to use an. So not hedonic means a loss of pleasure in the usually rewarding activities. Simply put, I say, Tom, your favorite band is coming to town. Let's go see him. And you go, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. Or, come on, man, you haven't been to the bowling league in 6 weeks. I'm not feeling it right now. Or whatever it is, there's a loss of pleasure in the things that were once important, the things that were once pleasurable, the things that really mattered. Those are the 2 biggest symptoms of depression. But to go further, what else is depression? Well, you'll see usually changes in eating habits and sleeping habits. And they could go on one end or the other of the continuum, but most often it's insomnia, although sometimes it's hypersomnia, right, where you can't get out of bed and you just sleep hours and hours because you're escaping from the world. You don't even want to get out of bed. But mostly it's insomnia because you can't sleep because there's so much on your mind that you're depressed over. There's also a change in your relationship with food and eating. Usually, you don't feel like eating. People call it the D diet. They lost 20 pounds because they got depressed.
Right.
But there are, I've never had that. When I've been down, I want to eat more. I like food. And so some people will eat more when they're depressed instead of eating less. There's also apathy, where you don't really care about things. There's a poor concentration aspect. Pessimism about the future. That goes hand in hand with depression. You just don't see anything coming up in the future that's going to change your life. And, when you look out, you see doom and gloom. There's also low self-esteem. Depressed people are down on themselves. They take things very, very personally. And there's even at times suicidal thinking, or if not suicidal, just I wish, I heard this once today already. If I don't wake up tomorrow, I'll be fine with that. I'm not going to do anything. I hear that all the time. I'm not going to do anything to kill myself, but I tell you what, something happened where I was taken out today, I wouldn't even care. Yeah. So, all those things can be linked with depression. And again, they have to last at least 2 weeks. In order to qualify for a clinical depression. Otherwise, we have subclinical depression, right? Sub meaning below. So it's not either you have it or you don't. It's like, maybe I don't have a full-blown clinical depression, or maybe I have a mild depression or a moderate depression. There are worse ones. There are very severe depressions. But anyway, it's on a spectrum. I hope that answered the question.
Oh, it did, but it leads to a lot more questions, and we'll have those for everybody when we come back here in just a few minutes. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned.
This blog on TNC Radio is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. The 5 best truck stops in America. Truck drivers spend days, sometimes weeks, out on the road. Sometimes taking a break at a nice truck stop's a great way to relax and take your mind off driving. There are many truck stops across the United States, but we listed the 5 best truck stops that every trucker needs to stop and experience. Little America, Wyoming. The Little America Truck Stop is located in Little America, Wyoming. It's a mini-chain truck stop with several locations throughout the country for truckers to enjoy. Little America offers a wide variety of services to truck drivers. Some of the services include service truck roadside repair, tire repair, new tires, wheel seals, oil changes, water pumps, brakes, courtesy property shuttle, AC repairs, belts, DOT inspections, and trailer tarp installation. Iowa 80, Walcott, Iowa. Iowa 80 is a place where truckers want to stop. It's the world's largest truck stop, and it's filled with tons of activities and tourist attractions. Truck drivers can stop and enjoy a nice meal, watch a movie, or stop by the trucking museum. Iowa 80 also has a full range of truck services and amenities. Some of the services and amenities include cat scale, chiropractor, convenience store, interstate dental, dog-a-mat, fuel center, laundry facility, library, travel service center, truck-a-mat, and a workout room. South of the border, Hammer, South Carolina. Pedro's Truck Stop, also known as Porky's, located in Hammer, South Carolina, is a world-famous roadside attraction for tourists and truck drivers. Pedro's filled with many different activities, unique foods and shopping. It also offers truck drivers supplies, showers, a trucker's lounge, and 24/7 fresh hot coffee. Trails Travel Center, Albert Lee, Minnesota. Trails Travel Center is everything a truck driver needs and amazing food. Some of the Trails Travel Center's food options are a tavern, Cold Stone Creamery, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and McDonald's. Truckers can also stop and shop heavy-duty truck parts or chrome parts. Trails Travel Center also has a truck service that offers drivers wash services, tire services, wheel alignments, and suspension repair. Jubit's, Portland, Oregon. Jubit's is a family-owned truck stop and boasts of being the world's classiest truck stop. They were also recently named the second-best rest stop in America. Drivers can enjoy a 24-hour full-service Cascade Grill restaurant, a 100-room hotel, movie theater, barber shop, and more. Jubit's also has a truck service center and is committed to providing truck drivers the best tires, truck maintenance, and truck repair. Some of their services include engine diagnostics, oil change, DOT inspection, glass replacement, metal fabrication, welding, tires, tire service, and airbags. Plus, brake service, truck trailer alignment, shock absorbers, air conditioning maintenance, electrical diagnostics, battery service, suspension repair, electronic logging devices, lubricant service, APU installation and service. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Remember to tune into the Truckers Network Show with Shelley Johnson. Weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. You almost can't help but to snap along with it, can you? All right, welcome back. TNCRadio.LIVE. Dr. Christopher Cortman's with you. I'm Tom Kelly. And thank you, Dr. Cortman, for helping us through the first segment there, talking and explaining about what depression is. Now, I know doctors such as yourself, you have the DSM, the diagnostic manual that helps you, make these determinations as to what's what, and how we are as humans. We like to label everything, and psychologists may be the best at labeling, relabeling, and coming up with new labels for just about anything that goes on out there. What are we? Are we still on DSM-5, or we graduated to DSM-6?
Yeah, we're up there. Yeah.
Okay, we're up to DSM-6 now. So they got all these different manuals but outside of all this list of time and all this kind of stuff, what is happening to us at a physical level? Okay, so, and this is the bad thing about being a driver, one of those dirty little secrets. You take what we talked about last week, on the road, weeks at a time. The only person you see every so often is the guy who says, stay in your truck, we're going to unload it, and then you need to take that trailer over there and pick up this trailer over here, and off you go again. So you don't get any real physical human contact. So you get kind of mired in the gunk, especially if there's something that kind of gets you going to start with, you're grieving the loss of something or someone. And you're not really able to, get the comfort of a family and those kinds of things that maybe a lot of people in America take for granted. If I got bad news right this moment, well, one day when I was sitting in my office, I got a phone call. My father had died. My wife heard what I was saying, came in and put her arm around me and comforted me right there as I wept. So I had somebody. But a lot of times drivers are out there, they don't have anybody to give them a hug. They don't have. So they're stuck with this for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Nobody to really comfort them, nobody to talk to. What's happening to them physiologically? What's happening to their brain? Obviously, like you said, they're probably not eating right. They're probably not sleeping right. What's going on with them?
Well, I don't want to paint a negative or a bad picture, but there are changes going on in the brain with depression, primarily in the prefrontal cortex, the thinking center of the brain, and also in the amygdala, which is the more emotional part of the brain. But not being a neurologist, I don't claim to be an expert in the brain, as much as to say there's really good news, and that is it's treatable. It can be corrected. It can, the brain heals. The brain is a phenomenal instrument. And we're learning more and more about its pliability and how it can heal itself from all kinds of things, and how we heal the brain. And hopefully we'll get into some of that today. But I want all of the listeners to know that we're talking about some really bad stuff, depression, but I don't want it to sound negative, because I would not be doing this for over 75,000 hours if there wasn't hope. And if I didn't see people recover from depression all the time. I have some stories very recently of real dramatic changes in people just turning it around by changing how they perceive the world. The interesting thing about the way the mind works is that the mind is not committed to depression any more than it's committed to happiness. It's how we perceive the world that creates our emotions. People think that they just feel what they feel because of the circumstances in their lives. But it's never the circumstances. It's always the way I explain them to myself, my explanatory style, if you will. How I explain the world to myself will determine to a large extent how happy and how well I am versus how depressed. If you like, perhaps I could tell a story or two to just kind of convey that.
Yeah, no, please, absolutely.
Okay, just to begin, my favorite story about how perception creates emotion. If I told this on the program before, and I don't think I did, forgive me, but it's absolutely a wonderful story conveying the primacy of thought and perception over emotion. It's a Tuesday morning, 9:00 in my office, and a 65-year-old gentleman walks in and says to me, how you doing, Doc? And I said, good, man, how are you? And he goes, oh, not good, not good. I said, well, what's going on? He said, my daughter, she didn't call me, no card, nothing for Father's Day. And I could tell he's feeling hurt. He's feeling resentful. He's feeling sad. He feels rejected. He kind of feels kind of kicked to the curb. He feels abandoned. You know, there's a lot of painful feelings because in his mind, all of these years I've done nothing but help my daughter. I paid for her college. You know, I was there for her growing up in every way. I've lived my whole life sacrificing for her, and I don't even get a phone call, not a card, nothing for Father's Day. And I look him in the eyes and I say, Brian, Father's Day's next weekend. And exactly. In a split second, this guy is smiling. He's embarrassed. He's relieved. He's hopeful. All of his emotions have changed in a split second. What's fascinating about this to me is that he created all of his emotions by what he was telling himself. And he was telling himself that my daughter doesn't care enough about me to even take a minute out on Father's Day to honor me and all that I have done for her. But he created all that in his mind because the truth was, the facts were that Father's Day was always on the calendar for the following weekend. But the facts don't matter. And that's the point here. It's never the facts. It's always how I explain them to myself that creates my emotions. And so we know that depressed people think differently from people who are not depressed. They explain the world to themselves differently. There's what's called a depressive trifecta, meaning 3 different ways that depressed people tend to think that non-depressed people don't. One of the things is they have a way of explaining things to themselves where they're always at fault. They're always to blame. Something I did ruined everything. It's always about me, and in a negative way. Secondly, they see things globally rather than specifically. So, for instance, they will get a paper that they did poorly on in school, right, an F paper, and, a healthy person would say, wow, this test kicked my butt. I sure didn't prepare well. I studied the wrong things. Whereas the depressed people might say, see, I told you I'm a failure. They have a way of globalizing things. Yeah. And the third thing that they tend to do is they project doom and gloom onto the future. The biggest link to depression that I've ever seen is the perception of hopelessness. When humans perceive a loss of hope, they sink like a rock in water. And so my emphasis is that we oftentimes have to change our thinking in order to feel better, because my brain is not committed to depression, but if I load it up with the right material, I can become clinically depressed. All I have to do is tell myself that I'm a loser, I'm hopeless, the situation will never change, no one will ever love me, my life is a waste. When people think those things, they become depressed, and when they become depressed, they continue to think those things. It becomes a vicious circle. Wow. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it does make sense, and I think I think one of the key takeaways here is, okay, we've got it well defined, but we can do something about it. You don't have to stay mired in the depression. So when we come back, we'll talk about some of the steps that a person can take if they do believe they're depressed, and spend some time looking at, I don't want to say the good side of depression, but, the part that there is hope here. Otherwise, like you said, why would you do this for all these years if there was no hope in it? So we'll be back in just a minute talking about that. You're listening to Dr. Christopher Cortman, Building Strong Minds, right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. According to some polls, 1 out of 3 human beings describe themselves as chronic worriers. That is, you could walk up to them any time of the day and say, "What are you worried about?" And they'll tell you, because if they're awake, they're worrying. Why do people worry? And what do we get from worry? That so many people worry chronically. Well, worry is pseudo-control. It helps us to feel like we're controlling something that we otherwise are powerless over. Let me tell you a true story. A young man leaves on Thanksgiving weekend to head back to his university in Pittsburgh. His mother in Florida states, "Son, I don't want you to go. The weather is terrible outside. Please don't leave." And the son smiles and says, "Mom, the plane's taking off. They're going to go with or without me." So before the son leaves, the mother says, "Honey, do me one favor at least. When you land in Pittsburgh, call me." He says, "Sure, Mom." So for the next 3.5 hours, this poor woman is pacing the house. She puts on the Weather Channel and she watches a giant H take over the screen. And she doesn't know what she's watching, and she shuts that off. And she has a drink of wine and maybe a second glass, and then she says, "What am I doing, getting drunk while my poor son is crashing to death?" She tries to lay down and sleep, but then she tells herself the same thing, that this is not a good thing for her to do if her poor son is flying in terrible weather. She prays to God and she says, "Lord, take this from me." And then 5 minutes later, she says, "Lord, give me that back." She needs to worry because it helps her feel like she has some control. Hours later, the phone rings, and she answers the phone, and she says, "Hello, hello." And her son says, "Mom, I just want you to know I made it." And she says, "Oh, I did it. I did it." Somehow in the mind of a worrier is the belief that my actions of worrying tend to bring positive outcomes. So you know what she's going to do the next time there's a flight in inclement weather? She's going to worry again. Do you want to know what the antidote is for worrying? Tune in to the next Mental Health Minute.
Hi, this is Bill Waldrop. Want to learn more about trains? Join us Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central for The Train Station. It's right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Welcome back, TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. With this one of our mini shows that we have on. After this show this evening, we've got Truckers Life Radio, brought by the good people over at TFC Global. And they're always have interesting things to talk about.
Like what?
Porn. Yeah, tonight actually going to be talking with a guy named Jonathan Daugherty, who put together a ministry called Be Broken Ministries. That's B as in B-E, Be Broken. Ministries, and it's going to talk. We're going to have a straightforward conversation amongst us men about pornography, the grip it can have on people, and it's one of the things about being alone all the time. It does let you kind of do whatever you want to, computer-wise and that kind of stuff. So, frank discussion, not for the children in the room, but going to have that discussion right here on TNCRadio.LIVE. That's coming up at the top of the hour on Truckers Life Radio from the guys over at TFC.
Well, we're talking about depression on this show, and these topics are not disconnected.
No, they're not.
Any kind of addiction, if you will, whether it's pornography, gambling, nicotine addiction, obviously alcohol, cocaine, they all contribute to clinical depression. And they also relieve clinical depression. So people will turn to them in an effort to feel better, but at the same time, it's making it worse.
Well, okay, you say it relieves depression. Is it doing something in our brains to relieve depression? Why do you say that?
Absolutely. It temporarily makes us feel better. Again, we have a dopamine rush. And it's well documented that alcohol provides us with a buzz.
Right.
And it actually is a central nervous system depressant, meaning that it reduces arousal or anxiety, and we feel better temporarily. But notice I said it's a central nervous system depressant, meaning it contributes to depression. Oh,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of these things, they give us a short-term relief, but they cost us in the long term. Same thing is true with nicotine. People feel better after smoking a cigarette.
Right.
But then the anxiety increases, and they have to have another one in 20 minutes because the body is craving it now.
Right.
And then it works. It does work.
Oh,
I mean, all these things people do, they wouldn't do them if they didn't work. I still don't know a single person who smokes banana peels. And that would make perfect sense because bananas, if you know this, are really healthy fruits. They're so good for us,
right.
And they're inexpensive. And you could eat a banana and then smoke the peel, except no one does it because it doesn't work.
Right.
People do things to change their emotions because they work. But most of these things that we're talking about, from porn to alcohol to drugs to gambling, all those things work. Video games, they work temporarily. They don't cure the depression. They work very temporarily to give you a little boost or a high to make you feel better.
I see.
And then they can even create more depression and more frustration. So it's a vicious circle.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then you got, with some of those things that you listed, guilt gets on top of that, and and other things that just kind of load it up and make it worse over and over again. And so we've been talking about some of the the bad parts about depression, and straightforward, even for some people leads to thinking about, if not taking their own life, not really caring about whether they live or die, which is not a good feeling for somebody driving an 80,000-pound truck down the highway at 60 miles an hour to be having. So let's talk about. So I heard everything you said the first time, and I'm out there driving. And I'm just making check marks. Yep. That's me. What do I do?
Well, the most important thing is to begin with, I have a problem and I need to get help. You could look at even the 12 steps of AA. It always begins with, I have a problem and I need to get some help. With an alcohol problem, it's that my life's become unmanageable. I can't control this stuff. My life's become unmanageable, and I need to reach out to a higher power and get some help. Well, with depression, it's not very different. To say that I'm going to just feel better on my own, it's really difficult. Reaching out to get some help. Now, there's different ways to get help. There's different people to get help. I'm not going to tell you that everybody who's depressed has to see a psychologist. I would be lying to you if that's the case. I'd be inaccurate. But it would be really smart to be able to talk to somebody about that. That could be your pastor, for instance, to say, hey, I'm having a problem. That could be your primary care physician. People are well aware of the fact that there are antidepressant medications that may help when people are depressed. There can be changes that people make in their lifestyles. For instance, if they know they're involved in a very toxic situation, and all they have to do is say goodbye to something or someone, and they feel dramatically better. They didn't have to get a session of counseling, but they had to let go of something that was really bad for them. In order to change when somebody's depressed, something has to give. Something has to change. And just beginning with, I have a problem is an excellent start. Now, do people just call mental health professionals all the time, every day? They'll call their psychologist, their psychiatrist, social worker, or somebody, and they'll say, I need an appointment. I feel awful. And, where we're going to begin is, tell me what's going on and how long have you felt like this and what are your symptoms? When did this start? Some people have no idea. They come in just saying, I don't know, I just kind of started feeling bad. Other people will say, I can tell you the exact minute. I can think a couple of those cases right now as I said that. One of them was a gentleman, and I said, well, when do you suppose you start to feel depressed? He said, no, I don't have to suppose. I could tell you the exact moment. I was sitting in my parents' living room, and I watched the fall of Saigon, 1975, on the TV news, and at that moment I became depressed. It's like, really? Yeah, well, I was in Vietnam. And he went on to say that he was a complete failure because he went over there, to win a war. And he watched it on the news. He didn't win the war. We didn't win the war. And therefore, he was a failure. And I was really struck by that because his thinking was so skewed towards depression, meaning he blamed himself. I had to ask him questions like, what exactly did you do over there that cost us the war? And he couldn't think of anything. And, the more we talked about it, the more he realized that he did everything he was supposed to do. He was an excellent soldier. In fact, the reason that this bothered him so much is because he really did care, and he put everything into it. He didn't fail. If there was failure involved, it was by people way above his pay grade. And, it was interesting. When this started to make sense to him, he climbed out of a depression, a pretty significant one, very, very quickly. He had a new way to think about what happened over there, and he didn't have to feel like a failure anymore. Just changed how he thought. And then one day he came into my office again, Tom, and he said, I have another problem. I said, okay. He said, what am I going to do with the lost time between 1975 and now that I've wasted being depressed? It was really interesting to me because first it was, I have to be depressed because I'm a failure. And now it was, okay, I'm done being depressed, but I can't get those years back that I wasted being depressed. And you know what the answer was there? We have to say goodbye to things that are over and make peace with the losses in our lives in order to reclaim today and tomorrow and learn good things. It's like it's not a waste if you can learn from what happened. And did he learn from what happened? Absolutely, because he never had to think of himself as a failure or a loser again. Nor did he have to think in black and white terms that if everything that happens to me doesn't go right, then I have to be depressed about it.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, we're coming to a break, Dr. Cortman. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to step out for just a few minutes. When we come back, let's talk about some of the resources that are available. Yeah. If you're out there right now and you're thinking, you know what, he's right, I'm going to do something about this. I got a problem. We're going to get it fixed. We're going to give you some resources that you can reach out to in this very moment. Not something you have to do tomorrow. You can do it right now. So we'll talk about that when we come back right here on TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned.
This blog is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 4 simple ways to improve your physical health as a truck driver. Being a truck driver is a rewarding career. However, it's not very rewarding for your physical health. A truck driver's lifestyle makes it difficult for them to be healthy. Because of their lifestyle, truckers are more likely to develop serious health issues like obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, and more. Although a truck driver's lifestyle doesn't promote healthy living, it doesn't mean that a truck driver cannot be healthy while on the road. There's several ways you can improve your health on the road. Here are 4 things you can start doing today to improve your physical health on the road as a truck driver. Avoid harmful foods. Avoiding unhealthy foods is way harder than it sounds. As a truck driver, your healthy food choices are extremely limited. While it may seem impossible to completely cut out unhealthy foods from your diet, it might be a good idea to cut back. You can start cutting back on unhealthy foods by packing meals in your truck. That way, the next time you get hungry on the road, you can eat a much healthier meal instead of eating greasy, high-calorie fast food. Another way you can start cutting back on unhealthy foods is to make a list of unhealthy items you eat every day and start slowly replacing them with a healthier option. For example, if you drink soda 3 times a day, cut back to 2, then to 1, and then none. Stock up on healthy foods. To live a healthier lifestyle, you have to cut back on heavily processed foods. Unfortunately, a truck driver's diet heavily consists of processed foods. Stocking up on healthy groceries is one of the best ways you can improve your physical health. When grocery shopping before your trip, avoid frozen pre-made meals, sodas, fried foods, chips. Instead, look for whole grain, fruits, veggies, and healthy fats. Start exercising. Exercise is essential to a driver's overall physical and mental health. Truck drivers have to get creative to stay fit while on the road. Finding the time to exercise can be a challenge for truck drivers. Drivers spend up to 11 hours a day on the road. After working all day, exercising may seem like the last thing you want to do, but you'll thank yourself later. Exercising a few times a week will not only improve your physical health, but also mental health. Get a good night's rest. The right amount of sleep is crucial for a truck driver. Lack of sleep can make driving dangerous. A study shows that long-haul truck drivers obtain less sleep than the required amount of alertness on the job. Truckers need a good night's sleep to be fully alert and ready to take on the road the next morning. Truck drivers travel several hundred miles each day. To reach their destination on time, they'll have to prioritize sleep so they can be alert and ready to take on the day. Not only is sleep an important factor for job performance, but it's also important for lowering stress levels and improving your immune system. Now, here are some ways to promote better sleep. Turn off electronics an hour before bed. Invest in a good mattress and pillow. Put up curtains in your truck cab. Avoid caffeine before bed. And exercise. This blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Don't miss Marcia Campbell, North America's trucking sweetheart, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Welcome back, TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Oh, Dr. Chris, thank you so much for talking through some of this stuff tonight. Before we go much further, wanted to take a moment and talk about some of the resources that our drivers have available to them. And, drivers, you've probably heard at this point of St. Christopher's. They are out there to help, and, it's a wonderful, wonderful group. I would point you to truckersfund.org, truckersfund, FUND.org. They've got multiple resources that are available out there to you, including truckstopministries.org. There is life coach services that are available, anxiety disorders that they'll put you together with, people who can help you there. They've even got e-counseling, and it's e-counseling.com. There's a lot of different resources that are available through organizations like St. Christopher's. And here's the really cool part: all confidential. They're not going to call your carrier. They're not going to, get you in trouble or something. They're not going to call your wife. Any of that kind of stuff. You can reach out and avail yourself of these services. Very, very private. And so you don't have to feel like somehow if you do this, you're exposing yourself to, being in further trouble. However, let's take this one step further. If in listening to all of this, you really are in a bad position and you need to talk to somebody, you can call 911 right now. You can call the 1-800 Suicide Prevention Talk Line. That's 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-TALK. That's 8. Yes. Try it one more time, Tom. That's 273. And I'm going to get this right. 8255. Okay, so I'm going to make sure we get that right. 273-8255. That's just to talk to somebody, and they are right there. And if you're a vet, they actually start off saying, if you're a vet, press 1. Yeah, they get that a lot of times. There are people who are struggling and want to talk to other vets, talk to people who've been there before, so they get that. And Dr. Corbin, here's something that's really cool that's going on in America. Some people may not even know this, that just like there's 911 out there to call and say, hey, I need help, right? By this summer, and some states and municipalities are already doing it, but by this summer, across the United States, I think it's the middle of July, 988 will work for 911 only for mental health issues. So you're feeling depression, you're feeling suicide, you need to get help right now. 988 will work just like 911, and you'll be able to talk to somebody right away who can help you. Dr. Corman, if they wanted to reach you, number one, is that possible? And number two, how would they go about doing it?
So srqshrink.com is a way to do it. There's an office number that they can always call, which is 941-485-8586. And I'm always happy to try to get a person, point them in the right direction wherever they're calling from. And if that ends up being working with me, fantastic. And if it's working with someone in another state or locale, we'll try to make that happen. What I want to emphasize is the wrong thing to do is to just suck it up and tell no one. Doing just about anything, reaching out for help is vital to get where you want to go. And there's so many ways to treat depression. I was alluding to earlier that you can change depression by changing the way you think. That's called cognitive therapy, where you change the way you perceive the world. But there's 3 ways to change all of our feelings and emotions. And for some reason, we don't teach this to children, but I sure believe we should. And the first way everybody knows about, and that's biochemically. You can drink something, smoke something, snort something, shoot something, swallow something, any kind of a chemical that makes it into your brain can change how you feel. That's why we have a multi-billion-dollar drug industry, some of it legal, some of it illegal, because drugs really do work to change how people feel. So we all know that. It's not always what we want to do, but there are drugs out there that can help people change how they feel. Secondly, you can change how you feel through your sensory motor system. What does that mean? It means you can run, jump, swim, scream, do deep breathing, meditation, prayer, express your feelings, run 5 miles, play basketball, do 100 push-ups. I mean, whatever it is you do through your sensory motor system will change how you feel, and very quickly, which is, if somebody's in a rotten mood, one of the first things I would say is, come on, let's go for a walk. Change how you feel just by getting up and moving. And I know when you're driving a truck, that's the last thing you could do because you're seated there. But if there's even a 5-minute break, we have research now that says just move in your seat, move your arms around. You know, if you can kick one of the legs around while the other one's doing the pedals, just move. Just move. But the third way, and the most permanent way to change how we feel, is to change how we think. And we could permanently change the way we think about things. For instance, we have so much research now that we know who's happy. You know, we talk about depression. What's the flip side of depression is happiness. We know who's happy. And happy people think differently than depressed people. And I'll tell you some things that are not going to surprise you. Happy people, let's just say they dwell in the fog, Tom. And what does that mean? In my words, forgiveness is the F word. They let go of all resentment and regrets. They don't hold on to grudges. As it says in the good book, they keep no record of wrongdoings, especially in marriages and in close relationships. You don't hold on to resentment and bitterness. You're always letting that go, because that's toxic to keep anger. It's toxic to keep resentment. The O in fog is optimism. Happy people think positively. And the research on optimism is amazing. When people are optimistic, they live longer, they're happier, they have better outcomes in pregnancy, better outcomes with cancer. It's remarkable just by having a sense that everything's going to be okay. Things become okay. And the G word, if you're going to dwell in the fog, is gratitude, which is, like optimism's twin brother. Gratitude is waking up in the morning and every day beginning with how grateful I am to be alive, and how pleased I am that I live in this country and that I have these opportunities. And I know we're running out of time, so if you want to do a part 2 on depression next week, there's plenty more that could be said. And if not, I'll try to wrap it up now. But I want people to know you don't have to stay stuck in a clinical depression.
No, you don't. And there is hope out there. Remember, srqshrink.com and St. Christopher's. Check out truckersfund.org. Lots of options out there. Take advantage of them. You've been listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Stay tuned next for Truckers Life Radio right here on TNCRadio.LIVE. Radio.live. 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 Radio.